This episode of the WP Minute is brought to you by OmniSend. Do you sell stuff online? Then you need to meet OmniSend, the powerful yet refreshingly intuitive email and SMS tool that helps you make $73 for every dollar spent. OmniSend is that good and effective. You probably know the struggles of investing in digital ads with no guarantee it'll bring money back into your pocket. Use OmniSend and you won't have to find creative ways to make your audience notice you. You just talk straight to them. Use OmniSend pop-ups to build a contact list, then send campaigns directly to people who already want to hear from you. Automate everything with OmniSend. Just set it up once, sit back, and watch those sales roll in. If this sounds too good to be true, check it out at omnisend.com. Visit omnisend.com. Tell them thanks for sponsoring the WP Minute. Katie Keith, welcome back to the WP Minute.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. Good to be here.
I've donned you my unofficial, official nemesis on Twitter for your ability to get so much interaction and engagement. You do a fantastic job, and I sort of joked a few months ago, maybe at this point, I can't remember because time is weird, but you do a fantastic job on Twitter, and I want to start with that. A lot of folks talk about like building in public. You are very transparent in public on Twitter. Strategy, naturally curious and exploratory. Do you have a strategy on the Twitter thing? Inquiring minds want to know.
I would say not explicitly. It's like, I suppose, an unconscious strategy might have evolved over time. Like, I only joined 2 years and 2 months ago, so I'm pretty new, really, so it took me a while to learn. But you'll notice over time my tweets have got more real, and I don't want to be like one of those guru people. They make themselves sound like a guru, and they do things like sentences on Twitter that sound like it came out of a business advice book or something. That's not what I want to be. I'd rather have conversations rather than trying to preach at people and things like that.
Yeah. It seems Twitter has actually become a pretty good sounding board for you as a founder. You know, is that a sort of go-to place for, you know, engaging with other founders, or are you part of other, like I know a lot of founders get into like masterminds and monthly calls, quarterly meetups. What does that look like in your world for like that sort of semi-solo founder journey, but reaching out for advice every now and again?
Well, my team actually laugh at me because whenever we need to do some research or we're unsure of something, I say, oh, I'll tweet it, and that'll give us an answer. And it always does. It's amazing. Yeah. And it's not my only source of advice by any means. I have my team, which is about 20 people. I have a really well-established mastermind group. We've been together 5 years, and we talk every day on Slack, calls every 2 weeks, and we share our experiences, and I get loads out of that. But Twitter has kind of become an additional way to get basically free business advice from really great people. Some of the top people in WordPress will happily answer my questions and share, and I try to do the same when other people ask. So I find that Twitter opens you up to a kind of wider pool of people that have lots of relevant experience, and I use it in all sorts of ways, not just things like strategy questions and what do you think of this idea, but also like hiring people. I've hired quite a lot of people that I got to know on Twitter, whether it's for freelance work or in-house team members. I hate advertising jobs. It's such a pain and takes forever. But actually, once you've built a network on Twitter, you can just reach out to people who you respect through Twitter, that you know a bit about them. And that's probably more promising than spending weeks and weeks advertising.
Katie Keith is the co-founder of Barn2 Plugins, barn2.com. And on that Twitter ecosystem, you recently announced that while you're heavily focused on WooCommerce and creating WooCommerce plugins and solutions, of course, other plugins for WordPress, but you're sort of shifting gears a bit and introducing Shopify into the mix. Really excited to talk about that today. We're gonna save that to the end and keep that audience member, that listener engaged through the show. I noticed you haven't set up Blue Sky yet. Are you on Blue Sky? Or are you thinking about, you know, splitting your time on the other social media?
Right now, no. It just feels like one is enough to do properly. I've got a bit put off with Facebook. I've used Facebook personally for years, But then when WordPress people started adding me, there was a lot of duplication. So my Facebook feed became full of Facebook posts that were the same as things they'd already posted on Twitter. And I find that really annoying. I don't want to say the same thing more than once. So my guess is that Blue Sky is a lot of that and people that I'm already connecting with. So I don't want to spend time looking through a second feed with the same content. I may be wrong there, but I don't feel I have the energy to do justice to multiple platforms right now. People also say go on LinkedIn, and I really can't be bothered.
Yeah. Yeah, I've totally pulled out of Facebook, both personally and professionally, for a while now, right? I don't really spend any time there unless I need to go like check something specific. But yeah, I think a lot of folks who are dipping their toes into the Blue Sky waters are doing that, right? I'm doing it. I'm copying and pasting the same thing I'm posting on Twitter. And I'm
interesting. No one told me that, but I suspected.
Yeah. And now there are times where I do feel more compelled to just like write something in Blue Sky. Blue Sky really, listen, I think there's a lot of people who have like everything else in life. My God, can we stop? It's been politicized. Like everything else. And it's just like, look, I like it because there are no ads right now. There's no algorithm just like constantly throwing like rage content at me. And it is like the essence of what Twitter was many, many years ago, where, oh my God, third-party developers that can access it, API access, third-party apps, like all of that is great right now until I know the eventual closing of API and data and the ads will come. And I'm just like, right now, I just want to enjoy this product that is very reminiscent of Twitter that I really enjoyed. And like, I don't know where it's going to go, but I am quasi investing in that. This is a long rant about like Twitter. I love Twitter or X, and I love it because the feed is largely text based, and I can just literally see more on my screen at one time, whether that's on my mobile phone or my desktop or my monitor, my laptop, whatever. Whereas you do go to something like a Facebook or a LinkedIn, and the posts just take up. It's like posts, ads, and it's just these big blocks of content with so much happening on LinkedIn that I'm like, I need to do better at this thing. And I don't, because I'm exhausted just looking at the feed. Whereas I don't get that with Twitter and Blue Sky.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. Let's talk about your other content marketing strategies at Barn2, YouTube, live streams. Of course, you do the Product Talk podcast as well with your team of podcasters. But what's the strategy looking like for 2025 with video and other content related to Barn2?
Well, our primary content channel is and has always been SEO content on our blog. I know everyone keeps saying Google's dead, SEO is dead. But even if it's replaced by AI, the AIs need something to crawl and index, which can come from our blog. So the vast majority of our sales still come from our blog. So that is our main channel where we put a lot of resources. But we do have a full-time YouTuber, Sam, who's been with us 2 years now. So he's putting out regular content on YouTube. And that's our second biggest source of sales. It's way behind Google Organic, but it is significant. So that's a good sort of backup, I suppose. Like about 6 months ago, we had a temporary drop in the Google search results after an algorithm change, which had never happened before. So that was scary. And the YouTube actually grew during that period, presumably for the same algorithm reason that while the blog went down, the YouTube went up. So it is good to have more than one channel.
Yeah. Have you tested the AI results, like searching your own product or like your own knowledge base on how to do something, but asking like ChatGPT or Claude and analyzing what they're giving you for results?
I have a bit, and it does recommend our products appropriately. And also we've seen sales from AI, particularly Perplexity AI, in our analytics as well as the source of conversion. So that's nice to see. And customers is telling us more and more I bought your plugin because ChatGPT recommended it. So that's really good as well.
Yeah, good and scary, right? What on the YouTube channel? I know Sam. I actually saw him at the last. I don't even know what the official title is for it, but it's like Ann McCarthy from Automatic does like a roundup of YouTubers every month, and they train us on stuff coming out of Automatic and WordPress. And I saw Sam on there, and he's just to give some kudos to Sam. He's really engaging. He's he's saying like, hey, I'm kind of new to the space, and I'm learning, and it's great to connect with other people. So he's doing his job. I know it might be review time, so let's give Sam a little bump. And it's great. What other things are you thinking about other than like the tutorial videos? I've seen some like office hours kind of things. Like what else is working for you for content on YouTube?
Yeah, we started the live streams that you mentioned a year ago, and I do those with Sam, and he's a good person to do those with because from setting up the tutorials, he knows our products really well. So he's able to answer questions live as well as they come in, as am I. So we're quite a good team with that. And we always get loads of people watching live, quite a lot of questions, both live and pre-submitted. And I was really surprised that they work actually, because we've got 19 premium plugins, which are quite diverse. They're not all WooCommerce, although they mostly are. So they don't necessarily have a theme to bring them together. So I was reluctant to start a live stream because I thought, why would anybody want to watch it all the way through when we have so many different products? But they do for some reason. I also don't know why anybody would subscribe to our newsletter for the same reason. It's all these random plugins, but we've got loads and loads of subscribers. And so people do seem to be interested just in what we're doing generally and willing to sit through content on plugins they may not yet know about. And hopefully they will then buy plugins that they didn't know they wanted.
Yeah, I think there's going to be, as wonderful as, or maybe not wonderful is not the right word, but as efficient as AI is making some things, and people are like interested in AI from like the business perspective and like the research, like give me this answer and explain it more, like, better than like just doing a Google search. I think there's still going to be this desire to have a human connection, right? Recently, I switched so to give it an example, like I'm at the point where, and we kind of see this in the WordPress space, and this is the next topic that we're going to transition to, but people want humans, right? People want to be served by humans. They want, I hope anyway, they want to be served by humans. They want to know who's behind a particular product. And, we see all the stuff happening with WordPress, and we kind of know like who owns WordPress. We know who develops it, and that's largely why we choose WordPress. But recently I switched from MailChimp to ConvertKit, or now just called Kit, because I was just like, Intuit, like I don't know anybody over there. I don't care about this megacorp. They don't care about me. I want to make conscious purchasing decisions for my business software that I just know who the people are who make it, right? And I think that's one of the long-term advantages WordPress has had, being open source and connected. And maybe that's a thing with like YouTube, like you maybe scratch your head sometimes like, why did anybody want to watch this? I hope that there's consumers out there that want that human connection, to know who's behind it, and to know like where their dollars are going, other than just buying the product. They just want to know who's behind this, who's making this, what's their vision for the long term of my business that runs their software. So I think there's something there. I don't know if you've thought about that or how you see that, like that human connection, or how important it is to you.
Yeah, I think that's more and more important the last couple of years for two reasons. One is AI, because a lot of content is being produced by AI now. And so by having real humans, I think obviously the deep fakes are coming, but for now,
Yeah.
people, I think, believe, for example, that me and Sam on the live streams are actually real people, and Sam on our YouTube. And we try to add that personal touch to various things, like we might have a name and signature and photo at the end of an email, like abandoned cart email or something, to show this is a company of real people. And the second reason I think that has become more important is probably 3 years ago now, a lot of WordPress companies were acquired by larger companies, and a lot of them, I think, became less personal as a result. Some of them kept their original founders who continued advocating for those companies even after being acquired. And others lost that personal face. So I think that since Barn2 is independent, there is a person that is reasonably known within the WordPress space running it and even talking openly about how I run it and things like that. I think that that adds credibility. And while the people that follow me on, say, Twitter aren't necessarily my target market, because a lot of them are product people rather than potential customers, there are, for example, agencies and developers following me who do buy plugins and have said that they're more likely to buy our products as a result of that personal connection.
Yeah. A lot of this had me like why I was critically thinking about it. I mean, I've been thinking about it for years. In fact, I was going back through my some of my YouTube videos on the Matt Report channel, where I talked about this goes back, and I'm not like the only person who has said it, but like you go back like 5, 8 years, 10 years, talking about like why human connection is so important. But recently with all this WordPress stuff that's happening, we recently saw at the time of this recording, the injunction come down from the court and sort of in favor of WP Engine. And Matt Mullenweg wasn't too happy about it and was very verbose, for lack of a better phrase, in post status, sort of commenting on it and quitting post status, largely, I guess, because of it. And it really had me thinking about, okay, where am I going with my dollars? Who am I like partnering my business with? And I've heard people say like, well, I'm switching content management systems. I'm getting out of WordPress entirely. I'm starting to look for alternatives. Has this impacted you and your team? I mean, we're going to talk about the Shopify thing. Maybe this is part of the reason, but has it like boots on the ground impacted? Maybe your customers are asking you about it, what the long-term lifespan of WordPress is. How has it impacted you, this whole scenario?
Well, no customer has ever mentioned it to me or my support team. It has never been mentioned in any of the comments on a live stream. So I feel that we need to acknowledge this. So internally, I have been worried, and we'll talk about this more with the Shopify stuff, in a way that I haven't before, about potential future risk. But this risk has not yet materialized. Our sales are about the same as they were last year, which isn't great, but that actually we haven't had much growth since a few months before all this stuff kicked off. So you can't blame it for that. We haven't had a drop over Black Friday. We haven't seen any material drop in revenue that we can attribute to these recent events. So, but it is a scary time that it feels like things are less certain than they were before.
Yeah. That's for sure. It's interesting. Like I talked to some, I don't know, normies. Is that to tell you, like people who don't follow WordPress, certainly don't watch my show, but they do use WordPress, and only a handful of them kind of knew about it, but largely because they are WP Engine customers. So that content is getting thrown in their face, like because it has to be through emails and I guess dashboard notifications and things like that. But they still were unclear. This scenario too has also like tried, and I think this is a broader impact across the community, and I'm interested in your thoughts on it, is that passion, that that desire to see WordPress continue to grow. I think that's been like the biggest impact, right, for a lot of us, is to be like, whoa, this isn't what we thought it was. Like emotionally, right? Like, do I need this stress, in my life for this kind of thing? Should I be thinking about this? And maybe it's just me because I cover it also as like a media channel. But like, do I need to have this stress in my life? And do I want to continue to, fly this flag for WordPress? And the answer is still yes for me, except for the stress part of it. But it's also like, yeah, man, like we're year after year taught that this is just a tool. And as innovators and as like leaders of our businesses, we have to keep thinking about like how we can pivot or at least expand so that all the eggs aren't just in the WordPress basket. Whereas, 5 years ago, you're probably not saying that. And that's like one of the real unfortunate things, the fallout of all this stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So as a business, I've always felt really safely diversified with Barn2 because we have multiple products. We have products across different niches, like some WordPress, some WooCommerce. We have annual renewal, so that if there was ever a sudden drop in new sales for, say, one product, then we would still have the sales from our other products and our annual renewals even on that product. So I've always felt really, really safe. We also have other income streams like affiliate revenue through our blog and that kind of thing. So I've never felt that my eggs were all in one basket. And WordPress has always felt like such a safe horse to back. It's been the market leader for so long. It's had such a great market share. And I've never had any doubts about the whole business being dependent on WordPress until the last 2 months. And then I started to think, actually, it feels like there could be a drop in market share and usage of WordPress, which I've never even worried about before. And even though I haven't seen it start to happen yet in the numbers, the fact that the leader of this community can destabilize people's confidence in it so quickly to that extent is very scary. And while we wouldn't be bankrupt straight away or anything if there was a 25% drop in the number of WordPress sites, obviously that would have consequences. And for the first time, I'm worried that something like that could happen if these dramas continue to have that impact. So that is one or, well, two things that started me to think about Shopify. The other is that I've always known that there was a risk that our product's functionality could be merged into either WordPress core or WooCommerce core, but it's never happened. And I knew that was a very lucky thing and it could happen at any time. But WooCommerce has a new policy, which is currently called More in Core, where they're actively looking to put a lot more functionality into core. And in a way, I think that's amazing and good because a stronger WooCommerce means a bigger market share, more people using it, which means more sales for us. But some of our plugins features are in the firing line, some of our bigger plugins as well. So that's another worry. And while I don't blame WooCommerce for doing these things or planning to, I need to safeguard my business. And so having products on additional platforms like Shopify feels like a safer strategy.
Yeah. I want to get to that WooCommerce more in core. It sounds like the biggest corporate speak I have ever. Steve Ballmer, developers more in core. Does Barn2 have any exposure on WordPress.org? In other words, if Matt just said, I'm taking this WordPress.org thing down, how does that affect Barn2?
We do have some free plugins, but that is minor for us. It wouldn't cause us major problems. So I haven't been as freaked out as some people about, on a personal level, about what happened to ACF, for example, which I realize they have to give back now. And also threats like the threat made against Paid Memberships Pro when they tried to remove their plugin from WordPress.org. Matt Mullenweg basically threatened to take it over without their permission, which didn't happen. But I wasn't personally worried because we are not dependent on our free plugins in the way that many customers are. Like I said earlier, our sales typically come from our content strategies and not from WordPress.org.
Yeah. There was an episode of WP Product Talk where Matt showed up in an interview earlier this year, and I'm still kicking myself, and I still kicking myself I didn't write this blog post because it was like I was watching that episode and there was just something very different in his tone, in his delivery. I mean, aside from the fact he was trying to do it from the woods, and he kept having internet connection, which was just like what's happening here. But it was at that moment where I recognized a difference, a change in him, and I started to pen an outline. I was just like, the things that will have to happen at Automatic, and I was playing with titles if I ran Automatic, this is what I would do, or things I think Matt will be doing with Automatic or whatever. And one of them was ripping the Band-Aid off. And that was one of my subtitles. And it was kind of what we're seeing now, but I didn't think it'd be this egregious, where I think he needs to take Automatic and WordPress and be like, here's WordPress by Automatic, right? Just as a product, as a company, to go this long, this far without any real massive, big product shift. People don't go to WordPress.com for hosting. That's not your first spot when you're thinking WordPress. You're thinking about other web hosts, and you're not thinking of WordPress as like, ooh, this amazing product that people must have. You're thinking like, okay, this is a product I have to learn. It's a great alternative. It's open source. I got to kind of learn it and put it together and host it over here. And it's a good solution, but I'm not like, it's not a desire for me, right? It's not this thing I desire. And I'm thinking to myself, like, in his shoes, there has to be this shift. And I've always said that he's going to put WordPress front and center by Automatic, powered by Jetpack, powered by .com, powered by WP Cloud. And oh, by the way, down here in the bottom right-hand corner, download WordPress for free, right? That's how I kind of like frame it. We all know how to get free open source WordPress. You can just go to the GitHub and download it or whatever. But I think from a packaging positioning thing, he needed to make this like drastic move. Now, I don't know if this was the motive behind what he did here, but I thought there was a rip the Band-Aid off moment. And then focusing on WooCommerce, this gazillion pound gorilla in the room that largely the average shop owner who knows Shopify has no idea about WooCommerce or how to put it together or what it means. And that was just like another focus. And I made a comment. You had published something on Twitter about the more and core thing, and I think I just came out like bluntly and said, like, I don't think WooCommerce is going to care about our customers, right? I think WooCommerce cares about, they look at your like Barn2's customers as their customers, because I think we're in that rip the Band-Aid off moment with Automatic, and as many developer relation people they're going to throw at us to like smooth that over. I think the time is up for them to be like, oh, let's all work together, no matter what they say on like social or in like real puff piece marketing things. You don't have to get as aggressive on that response as I have, but like that's the way I see it. I don't see WooCommerce slowing down, and I think they're just going to come for everyone's customers, because I think that's just going to be the revenue generator for Automatic for the next 5 years.
I think that Matt Mullenweg has shown a more aggressive side of himself lately, and disrespect for the community and the people and companies in it. And of course, he ultimately controls WooCommerce. However, I haven't seen any evidence that he's particularly involved in it at all on a day-to-day basis. And I have seen a lot of evidence of a real desire for collaboration from the people who are in charge at WooCommerce at the moment. And so people are very suspicious of WooCommerce at the moment because it's part of Automatic. But actually, I'm not seeing those worries in the actions of the people in charge right now. Are you?
Yeah. Well, so there was I think it was Matt's interview with on the TechCrunch Disrupt stage. I think that was the one. And I've always been, having talked to Matt a few times, and on this podcast or on the podcast that I've done, I've always learned to listen for what he doesn't say and what he doesn't mention. And there's a few throwaway lines about WooCommerce when the trademark stuff came up about WP Engine and the trademark of WordPress and them sort of air quotes abusing it. And there was just like this throwaway comment with like all the nuances around abusing the WordPress trademark. And then he kind of like threw away like, and then there's WooCommerce, but that's totally our trademark. I'm paraphrasing here, but it was sort of like you might be able to mess with the nuances of WordPress because it's been in the community for 20 years and it's open source and everyone kind of recognizes that, but we own WooCommerce. Like, ain't nobody touching this WooCommerce thing. And I heard him like kind of like just full stop on the WooCommerce thing, like you can't even mess with this. And I thought to myself, yeah, like that is a brand that that's a pure trademark play, pure brand play that I don't think anyone can obfuscate who owns that. It's strictly Automatic. And I think like when he starts pressing the boot down on that, both like pushing WooCommerce to make revenue and like this is our brand, it's just going to be a whole new world on how they operate. And I don't blame them because they need to run like Shopify in order to do Shopify things. Marketing for one, advertising. I don't know how he can run Certainly, I don't know how he can run WooCommerce commercially. I don't know how he's doing WordPress commercially without being as traditional, aggressive business owner. Full stop. Rip the Band-Aid off. I don't know how he can do it by smiling and hugging us at WordCamps anymore. I simply do not see it. And this is that next chapter we're in my opinion.
Yeah, I would quite like to see them taking full responsibility for WooCommerce
Yes.
as a platform, because, as you say, it is lacking that central marketing drive that platforms like Shopify have. So if they accept they own WooCommerce, they are ultimately responsible. And yes, it has an ecosystem of plugins like Barn2 that are building for it. If they took that responsibility, I hope they would drive it to grow more, which I'm not seeing at the moment. And I'm very disappointed that they're not doing, because they are a profit-making company. And I think that they should be investing more in the marketing rather than expecting all these smaller companies to be encouraging people, which of course they should do, but I'd like to see that being done centrally. And in terms of what you say about everybody knows they own WooCommerce, I think it's hilarious that about the confusion about WP Engine and WordPress Engine, and is it the same thing? Because WordPress is so confusing, like WordPress.org and Automatic and WordPress.com and who owns what, and that's where the confusion is. And obviously it's in WooCommerce's favor, or not obviously because it's debatable, but I think it's in WooCommerce's favor that there isn't that confusion. It is owned by I think Automatic is a separate company from WooCommerce, but it owns the WooCommerce company, and that they can therefore have that. WordPress is very woolly, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Playground. So we have the WordPress playground. We have the WooCommerce playground. You're going to introduce going into the Shopify playground. I have a lot of friends who say, oh God, Shopify isn't any better when it comes to, playing nice with its competitors. A friend of the show, Jordan Gall, used to run a product called CartHook, and he has some very interesting war stories of dealing with Shopify and how they kind of pushed him out of their own marketplace and had no choice but to sort of give up the reins of his software, which was doing really, really good. And now he's on to a new product called Hey Rosie. Same concerns? How are you looking at Shopify going into this, dealing with the same stuff or in the face of dealing with what we're dealing with in WordPress?
It does have many of the same risks, particularly with regards to the possibility that they would put functionality into core, or that we would somehow fall foul of their terms and conditions or something like that, because we would be selling on a marketplace. And actually, we don't do that with WordPress. We're not dependent much on .org. We're not on the WooCommerce marketplace. So we do sell independently at the moment. But I see that as being countered by the greater diversification, so that, yes, maybe something will go wrong, but we're aiming to build multiple Shopify apps. So if something went wrong with one of them, that wouldn't kill the business. And also the fact that as an ecosystem, it is actually feeling a bit more secure because of all the uncertainty in WordPress. So while we're not looking at reducing our presence in WordPress in any sense at all, going into a very well reputable platform like Shopify, that there's a lot of respect for the leadership. They seem to have very clear strategy, and they are very heavily investing in promoting that platform, is attractive to me, although I do acknowledge those risks.
Yeah. You finally say, okay, I'm going to tell the team we're going to go in the direction of Shopify. We're going to have to start developing for Shopify. What is that like? What's the team reaction? Was it a conscious team decision? And how do you start, divvying up the hours, or like the conscious effort to learn how to do it, just like you had to learn how to make a plugin? How do you do that for the Shopify world?
It was really my decision on my own, I suppose, although I talked to other people about it. And then after doing lots of research and thinking and talking in private to other WordPress people, actually, I had a lot of calls with WordPress people that have Shopify experience as well, including some quite high profile people with a lot of experience. And that was really helpful. And they were very positive about the idea of going into Shopify as well. So that gave me more confidence. So once I was very sure about the idea, I told the team, and I worded it in a careful way about not like, this is a disaster, we need to escape WordPress or anything like that. But given that there is more uncertainty than there was before, I have decided that the most secure option for Barn2's future is to start building products for Shopify, as well as continuing with our WordPress products. So I tried to word it in a reassuring way. And it seems to go really well. The team was really positive and excited about it. The support team quickly started having internal discussions about whether they could support Shopify, and they decided that they would. And the developers were really positive as well. A lot of them were very excited about the idea technically of building for Shopify, because it would be a new challenge and they've heard good things about it. And some of them had particular skills like Laravel and React and things like that they thought would be really relevant. Because I was very unsure at the beginning, should this even be Barn2, or should I just set up a completely different brand, hire Shopify experts and have totally different people developing and supporting it? And the more I got into it, the more it did feel like Barn2. We have an established software company. We have a support team, we have a QA person, we have developers with lots of skills. And the more I got into it, the more it felt like it's no different really to building another plugin. I consulted with my head of development about the technical options, because with Shopify, you can basically use any programming language or platform, and then it connects to Shopify. You don't have to use, say, Ruby, which Shopify itself is built in. So my head of development immediately had a proposal. He'd obviously thought about it before and wrote some really great technical guidelines. The other part of your question was about allocating resources. And that was a big decision because I have loads of ideas for our existing WordPress plugins. So I tried to think, what is likely to have the biggest impact on revenue if I add this extra feature to a plugin, or if we have a Shopify app? First of all, I thought, okay, I'll put one developer on Shopify. We've got about 5, I think, in total. And then as things got more uncertain with the more in core stuff, I started to think, well, this is worrying. Maybe I don't want to add all these features to a product that's likely to go into core or something similar. So then I've now moved 2 developers to Shopify starting from the new year, which is quite a big proportion of the team.
Yeah. I think it's smart for you to continue with both product catalogs being on Barn2, because, like you said, established brand, you're a software company already, and I think there's a particular advantage there because there are people, it kind of helps. You expose Shopify people to WooCommerce and vice versa. So if a customer ever just says, you know what, I want to go to Shopify now, at least you have an offering for them, right? And same thing. Customer goes, yeah, I want to leave Shopify, I want to go to this WooCommerce thing. You have a suite of products there. And I think that's just a healthy way to build out your ecosystem. So I think what I'm hearing is it as easy, with air quotes, for you to just take one of your top WooCommerce plugins and just say, okay, let's replicate this for Shopify? Do you have that first Shopify product idea in mind? And if so, can you share it, or are you still planning it out?
My starting point for deciding on app ideas was our plugins, because I understand the market in WooCommerce for that. So it felt like a sensible starting point because I wouldn't be totally starting from scratch. Technically, it's not that much use because we built them as plugins. We didn't build them to be used across multiple platforms. So it wouldn't save that much development time. But from a research perspective, I started there. And it was interesting because sometimes during the research, I would find these insights through my WooCommerce knowledge that I felt that the Shopify market was missing. So, for example, I typed for a particular keyword, and the things that came up weren't what I think people mean by that keyword. I thought, this is interesting. Do Shopify people use different terminology, or have I identified a gap in the market? So we have decided on 2 initial ideas, which are related but not identical to our current plugins, which I haven't announced yet. So it's very recent decision, so I'm not going to say, but
sure.
But that is a useful starting point. Although there's a lot different. I've discovered some things in Shopify that are very different to how the WooCommerce extensions approach it. And actually, yesterday, I planned a new feature for one of my WooCommerce plugins that I'd seen that all the Shopify apps in that space have. And I don't think any WooCommerce ones on the market have that feature. So I thought, oh, that's a good opportunity to improve our WooCommerce business. So hopefully everything will benefit.
How, I think I have an idea because I once again saw one of your tweets. How are you starting to learn more about Shopify, the community? I think one of the advantages companies have in the WordPress space, or I like to think so anyways, that there are a lot of us making WordPress content and media. Your podcast, your YouTube channel, my stuff, countless of our friends and colleagues that make content. I think it's easy, and we've seen this with OmniSend, right? I think it was easy for OmniSend to come into the WordPress space from their Shopify experience and look at us and go, okay, there's like 12 content creators of podcasts, YouTube channels that we can sponsor and learn from, and we just need to dive into this set. Does that exist in the Shopify world? Is that how you're learning, how you're trying to get exposure and start to build up the Barn2 brand in that space? Or is it slightly different or maybe a little bit more complicated?
I think a lot of people in WordPress seem to have prejudice against Shopify as an ecosystem because it's not open source. And I've met people at WordCamps that have said things about how it's not as friendly and people don't support each other. But actually, so far, that hasn't been my experience. For example, I've watched lots of YouTube videos from previous Shopify conferences, which are just like WordCamps from what I can see, with product people standing on stage and sharing how they made their app so successful. And there are newsletters that I found, actually one of my team members found, about how to build a successful Shopify app. There's lots of advice about that on the Shopify App Store for obvious reasons. They want people to build successful apps. But when I've been tweeting, it's also been interesting because Shopify people have started to follow me and have reached out, several, maybe 2 or 3, offering advice. And actually, straight after this interview, I've got a call with a Shopify app seller just to give me advice and share his experiences. And people that I don't know and I'm not in that space yet are being really friendly and reaching out to help me, as well as the WordPress people that know Shopify that are doing the same. So I found, although it's kind of scary, like learning a whole new platform when I just know how WooCommerce works and how customers think, I am finding that the resources are available.
Yeah. Well, I'll definitely set you up with Jordan if you're not already friendly with him. You might not get the the glowing review of Shopify, but you'll certainly get a real honest take. And it obviously been a few years since he's been in the Shopify world, but he can definitely tell you maybe what to avoid. Katie Keith, Barn2.com, WP Product Talk Show. Check them out on YouTube as well. Search for Barn2 on YouTube. Katie Keith, where else can folks go to say thanks?
Yeah, well, the main place to connect with me individually, as you've probably gathered from this interview, would be my Twitter, which is Katie Keith Barn2.
Awesome stuff. Everybody else, the WPMinute.com, the WPMinute.com/subscribe. It's the #1 way to stay connected. And we'll see you, I think, in the new year at this point, if I did all my scheduling correctly. All right, everybody. We'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening to the WP Minute. This episode is brought to you by our amazing pillar sponsors, Pressable, OmniSend, Bluehost, and Kinsta. Without their support and the support from our WP Minute Slack members, this content wouldn't be possible. Thanks to our Foundation Plus sponsors, Hostinger, Big Scoots, Themile, Optimal, PatchStack, Weglot, Personalized WP, Deploy HQ, and WP World. Their recognition to help support independent WordPress media keeps the lights on. Want to support the WP Minute through sponsorship or joining our members-only Slack? Visit WPMinute.com/support.